Hey everybody, this is Ryan with RedDragonHerbs.net, and today I'm going to talk about ground ivy. Ground ivy is a very common one. Usually you hear it called creeping Charlie, sometimes creeping Jenny. Sometimes you'll hear older folks call it wandering Jew, and the ancient Saxons used to call it alehuff, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But the other day I talked about the dandelion and how that was probably the most hated weed or most notorious weed or whatever, but really this is probably it, because it's so prolific, and it was actually brought over here from Europe for that. It's a hell of a ground cover. It keeps this nice dark rich green color most of the year and has these little purple flowers or whatever. And probably its most important quality is it grows sometimes where grass won't, like in shady areas. You'll see a lot of it in older neighborhoods where the tree canopy is mature and there's a lot of shade. And there are a lot of yards, like say in Des Moines, for instance, over by the fairgrounds, where there's probably more of this stuff than actual grass, just because it's so shady and it does well where grass doesn't. Um, but our European ancestors didn't bring this over just because it looked pretty. It was also very useful to them. And well, for one, as I said, the ancient Saxons called it alehuff. They used it the same way you would use hops as making beer. So they would make alcohol out of this. Kind of interesting. And I will be reaching out to some small scale brewers and seeing if they can do anything with this. But believe it or not, Creeping Charlie here, ground ivy, is actually very closely related to mint. And it's got a very distinctive smell that, after you know that it's related to mint, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, okay. I think it smells kind of close to catnip, if anything, for what that's worth. And boy, it's got a long history of use, and anyone that's spent any time behind a lawnmower knows this smell. Um, Now, historically, beyond using it to brew beer, most people would make a tea out of it, which I have right now. It's nice, and sometimes people would just eat the leaves raw. I'll do it right now. Honestly, I couldn't see myself eating a whole salad of this, but it's not that bad. And part of the reason why it's not that great just to eat like this is the leaf does have a waxy coating, um, slightly waxy. That does keep predators away from it. There's not a lot of things that will eat it. For instance, in my backyard, my chickens won't touch this. You never really see insects going after it, and this waxy coating actually makes it kind of resistant to pesticides. So they do have a lot of like lawn care companies have a lot of problems getting rid of this stuff. You have to the planets have to be met like aligned a certain way to kill it or whatever. But it tastes okay, but it's very useful. They used to prescribe this for bronchitis, whooping cough, chest colds, anything chest or lung related, sinus headaches. Sometimes they dry up the leaves and make a snuff out of it for sinus headaches, and I guess that worked. And it's supposed to also be good for back pain and arthritis. And it's also a diuretic, kind of like dandelions, where it does have that detoxifying effect. And like its cousin, the mint, it's good for stress relief, tension relief, or whatever. And they used to also prescribe it for vertigo. So I don't know how that works, but apparently it does. And they also said it was good for tinnitus, that ringing sound in your ears. And I guess it worked pretty well for him back then. Now, as I talked about, it's kind of that minty smell. It's very distinctive. People way back when, found it cool and refreshing. Yeah, I could see that. So they would make basically a shampoo out of it, or rinse their hair with ground ivy water, and I don't know. I suppose it probably has a little bit of antiseptic qualities to it, maybe. And they would also use it to make an eye wash with that same water. So A lot of times there were a lot of eye problems back then because of water issues and sanitation and so forth, and they would use it to wash their eyes. Now, in the environment, it's kind of important because, well, for one, it builds in areas sometimes where grass won't, but it's also another plant that's really quick to flower. Um, Pretty much right off the bat in the spring, almost the same time as dandelions, maybe a little bit later. And it's important to a lot of smaller pollinators, like you'd say sweat bees or whatever. And yeah, so it's a cool plant. I didn't even realize there were so many uses to it, and it's one that's really vilified out there. Now, as far as red dragon herbs goes, we do not sell ground ivy, and I have no plans to sell it. Suppose if you really want, we can arrange a pick and pay deal in my backyard, just kind of like we have to do with strawberries or whatever. But this is something that I guarantee you have some in your yard, or if not, it'll be really close to you one way or another. And there's somebody that would want you to come take this away from them. The way you would use it, pick the leaves. It's best to get them away from the stems. You could dry them out and store them as a tea, or you can even just grab a pinch of them like this and throw it in a mug and put boiling water on it, let it sit for 5 minutes and strain it, and you have ground ivy tea. It's really not that bad. So, anyway, this has been Ryan with Red Dragon Herbs, and thanks for watching.